Hi, this is Mariah Gullo from The Hollywood Reporter, and this is Meet Your Emmy Nominee, and I have Neil deGrasse Tyson with me.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Dr. Neil to you.
Dr. Neil.
No,
like
it's just
it.
Neil. No, it's just Neil. By the way, if I had to use my title for you to...
It would get longer, wouldn't it?
Well, no. For you to sort of believe what I said, it meant I didn't really give you a convincing argument. So, a convincing argument should not require title. Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, I don't know how many doctors have received 5 Emmy nominations, but you have.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
These are your third for StarTalk.
Yeah.
5 in total.
And I had one for a voiceover that I did. So you do your homework here.
I do.
Yeah.
I try.
Yeah, okay.
So how did it feel to be nominated this year?
So I don't know if my feelings are common, but we're bringing science to television in a way that hasn't happened before. And I don't know how many people know StarTalk on the Nat Geo channel is the first ever talk show based on science on television, like ever in the history of television. And so for us, it was, oh my gosh, someone took notice. Forget whether you win or not. To be nominated, it was like somebody is paying attention to what we did. And because we got nominated in the first year, second year, this is our third year to be nominated. And so I'm happy just being noticed because we're trying to make a difference out there on this landscape of anti-science, and people don't know what science is and they think they do. But we're doing it in a way that it resonates with entertainment. Yeah. Right? This is what you guys do, is entertainment. Who knows who else has sat in this chair? Big time entertainers. And for people to think of science as entertainment, oh my gosh, that's a world. That's a different world. Rather than science as this thing you left in the classroom. Right. And you did it while you were there, but then you stepped away and then you forgot about it and sold your science textbook. Right? The fact that people continue to return to it. And you might come for the celebrity and stay for the science, because the people I interview are generally name brand celebrities, hewn from pop culture. And they don't have to be scientists. They're hardly ever scientists. So the point of the show is to celebrate all the ways science touches our lives, even if you didn't think that ever happened to you. So I see StarTalk as reaching people who never knew they liked science. Or better yet, reaching people who thought they didn't like science. That's even better. They're the big challenge.
You're expanding the geek universe to include all.
Oh yeah, the geek universe, we made a word out of that. The Geekiverse.
Geekiverse. I love it.
Yeah, get with the program, all right? Visit a few Comic-Cons, all right? You'll get you'll get your geek on.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. What role does creativity play in the scientific realm?
So it's interesting. I think people overstate the correspondence between artistic creativity and scientific creativity. I think, yes, there is creativity. I'm on a frontier and I have no idea what my next step into the unknown should be. I have to be creative about what I consider to be a path to take. However, at the end of the day, nature is the ultimate judge, juror, and executioner. Okay? If it doesn't match nature, no matter how creative I was in that idea, it is irrelevant. Not only that, if I discover something, fine. If I didn't discover that thing, somebody else is going to discover that thing later in exactly the same way. Not so with the arts. Okay, so let's take Van Gogh's Starry Night. We all know Starry Night. And if he didn't paint that, no one ever after him is going to paint that. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, if he didn't compose that, no one ever after him is going to compose that. So artistic creativity is unique in space and time, where scientific creativity exists in a moment and could easily, not easily, but could be duplicated later. And so that being said, both science and art issue forth from what it is to be human. There's no other species on Earth that remotely comes close to this kind of activity. And just think about it. When you visit cities of antiquity, or even not so antiquity, what do you visit? You visit the art, the architecture. You see their achievements. And you've long forgotten what crusty ruler, it's what's left over is the expression of a culture, their creativity. And I like the phrase, and maybe people haven't thought about this phrase. I'll put it back on the table. You ready? You know the phrase, if someone's really good at something, so he's raised it to an art. Or you can say, he's got it down to a science. Right? I think they're two sides of the same coin.
Right.
And they each need to be celebrated to their highest levels. Without it, I guess you could have a civilization without either, but would you want to be a member of it? I don't think so.
Yeah. So your show, StarTalk, you're putting together entertainers and scientists. Have you forged some new and unusual friendships by bringing these people together?
I would say new, but I don't know that I would call them unusual, because you part the curtains, we're all just still people. And so it is fun meeting people who are singular achievers in something that they do. That is always a joy, because you learn things. You learn, oh, by the way, in almost every one of those cases, there's a whole list of occasions where they had failed. So often we think people are just born brilliant or born talented and they just landed, and no. Maybe that happens every now and then, but certainly not the norm. The norm is the people who succeed are also the people who failed mightily and have risen up out of the ashes of their failure to learn how to not fail that same way another time. And you keep doing that and you emerge on the other side of this. And so to speak to people who are singular achievers and learn sort of lessons of life for how they have overcome challenges, I found it to be deeply motivating. And to the extent that that can come out in our interviews, we'll tease that out. But yeah, it's also fun. We've interviewed musicians. That's a whole other species.
Yeah.
I mean, there's musicians and there's actors. I don't know that, it's a whole culture, a whole thing. And so I'm delighted to gain this exposure, because the more exposed I am, I think, to these different sort of branches of human creativity, in the arts especially, the more ways I'm forced to think about how to connect science to it, so that the viewer can then see how all the ways that science permeates all of life. And at the end of the day, we shouldn't even be thinking of science as a separate subject, because science is life.
Do you think that musicians know how tied they are to mathematics? Has it been your experience?
So I think those who do know this might be the exception. Josh Groban, for example. Okay. I'd only barely heard of him at the time I interviewed him. This is maybe 6 years ago. And then I looked him up. It was like, my gosh, this guy has this huge following. And he's a crooner, right? And all the ladies know who Josh Groban is. And so I asked him, well, what percentage of your audience are women? And he said, about 110%. So it means 10% could have a sex change and he'd still be 100%, okay? But speaking to him, he did a high school science experiment. He was into music, as long as he can remember, where he had a speaker cone where you remove the grill and you just have the cone, and he layered it with mirrors. Okay. Then he had lasers pointing onto these mirrors, reflecting to the ceiling. Then he played music through that speaker cone, and the speaker cone vibrated, and you could see the laser points dancing on the ceiling. This is brilliant. This is he's getting his geek on.
Yeah.
In this, and I think if you probe people's lives, there are a lot of occasions where people were touched by science, whether or not they were thinking of it in that context. And some of our favorite guests are those who you might be a fan of theirs, but you did not know that they had a geek underbelly. And interviewed Morgan Freeman, this is some years ago. And then you learn that as a boy, he was on the porch, I forgot, one of these southern states where he grew up. He just kept looking up every night at the universe, contemplating its immensity. And and in later years, he'd be hosting a show through the wormhole about science and philosophy. So it's working the other way. You know, we have an actor trying to bring some science into that, and I'm a scientist bringing sort of the celebrity of your community into our world.
Is it hard to wrangle such a diverse group of people? Like, as a host, can you give me some pointers on how you...
So here it is. It's a little bit of extra effort for me because fundamentally I'm a scientist and I belong in a lab. I don't really belong talking to famous people. And so to speak to famous people, I want my conversation with them to be meaningful. So we have a whole team of researchers, and I get sort of pre-prepped and their notes, and I say, okay, they did this. I didn't know they did this. I'm going to orbit that in the conversation. You like that? I said, orbit it? Is it like that? You like that? I'm going to orbit that in the conversation. And so this is my learning curve as well, so that I can ensure that the viewer gets the most meaningful exchange between someone who they may be a fan of and me, the scientist. And so it means I have to know all the ways that science can touch their life and has touched their life, and then make it interesting to the viewer. So yeah, it's more homework on my part, but I don't mind it, and I learn from it. And if there's a day that goes by where I don't learn something, that's a wasted day.
What's been one of your most proud moments on the set of StarTalk?
Oh yeah, I don't have a sense of pride as an active emotion. I got one for you, okay? But it's not pride. It was like a holy.
I like that. I like those moments too.
Yeah,
we
okay.
can talk about the holy shit moments.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Okay, you said it. I was
know.
like,
it's the internet.
So, I a couple of years ago interviewed Biz Stone. Did you know who Biz Stone is?
From
You don't have
Twitter?
to. Yeah, Twitter.
Yes. Okay. Twitter CEO.
So, yeah, co-founder of Twitter.
Okay.
I forgot his current title, but he's a co-founder of it. And Twitter is a weird beast. Why would people do this? You think about this. And, I'm active on Twitter, kind of, I tweet between 5 and 10 posts a week. And to hear his thought process in the invention of Twitter. And here's what he said. He said, you ever see birds pecking away at crumbs on the ground in a park? They're all individual birds. Then something happens, then they all rise up and flock together. And then for some mysterious reason, mysterious to humans, they're done, then they come back down, and they're individuals again. And he said, we, as a species, did not have a mechanism for flocking until Twitter. Because what happens at Twitter, someone does a call out. We need to do this now. And whatever else you were doing, if you agree or participate, then everyone aligns. And everyone is participating in this one act. And I live in New York City, near Ground Zero. And it was like late at night, and all of a sudden I heard all this noise outside, and there were people descending on Ground Zero. I said, what happened there? I turned on the news. They'd gotten bin Laden. Well, how do all those people know this right now? All right? They weren't all tuned into the news and decided to do this. There is a Twitter network that went out, and everybody's flocking together. And I said, oh my gosh, we do flock. We just didn't have the mechanism to enable it. And so that just blew my mind. And I said, whoa, that's good.
That's cool. Do you know of any kind of wonderful off-the-wall scientific theories that you're excited about right now?
Oh, there's tons. So on the frontier, ideas are always off the wall. And most will be shown to be wrong. But they're fun to think about. And they make good fodder for science fiction storytelling if at the time the idea arises there's not really much data to support it. Well, that never stopped a good storyteller,
No.
right? You start where you know what works, and then you extend into regimes where now your creativity could just take it where you want. So right now, the idea that we might be one of a multitude of universes that collectively comprise the multiverse.
Yes.
And if every combination of all atoms manifests in these universes, then you could have a twin in that universe. But maybe that twin has blonde hair instead of black hair. Just that one little difference. Because all statistical fluctuations of what can be would then be manifested in the multiverse. So that's like freaky to think about. Plus, it may be that different universes have slightly different laws of physics, so you don't really want to visit them unless you like check it out in advance.
Yeah.
Send something else over the border before you do that. There's that. We still don't know how life arose from organic molecules. So there's organic molecules to self-replicating life. That transition, which happened on Earth 4 billion years ago, we still don't understand that that's a frontier. It's not a freaky frontier, but it's just a frontier. We don't know. So we don't know what's at the center of a black hole. And it's kind of hard to test that. Yeah, go in the event horizon and get into and come back and tell. You first. It's dangerous. You go first. One of my favorite lines of Indiana Jones. They look down and they see the snakes. Ooh, snakes, very dangerous. You go first. There are always interesting ideas on the frontier. And that's what keeps us excited every day. You wake up and you go back to the lab. And one day I hope to just give all this up and just go back to the lab. But I want to do it at a time when there are enough others who are doing it, enough other scientists and science educators that I can just slowly fade and no one will notice. And I just go to the Bahamas, take a break, and then so what? And
then to the lab after the Bahamas.
After the Bahamas, exactly. But what it would mean is that we wouldn't then be so singular on this landscape. There would be just everybody. All networks would have a science talk show.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, how it should be. And I have some like stupid, crazy number of Twitter followers. And every morning I wake up and I say, guys, you're following an astrophysicist. There's still time to back out. You can rethink this today. Now's your big chance. And so the fact that the number's so larger than any expectation I would have ever had for it, it puts that much greater a responsibility on my shoulders. I'm happy to shoulder that responsibility, but it means you can't just whip things out. I mean, I gotta think about it, and am I being the educator I want to be for every tweet that I post? Because I don't tweet where I am or what I'm doing. Some people say, I'm having a hamburger now. I'm going to the airport now. Are you watching this? I'm watching. No, I can't. I'm an educator. I'm going to spend time with you, some information should be exchanged.
Yes.
On a level where you come away saying, I'm a little more enlightened after that moment than I was before.
Yeah.
And that's my goal, and I think people are resonating with that. That's a great sign. Especially in a time where resonating with enlightenment doesn't seem to be what's driving the world at this moment. So,
and I know you're very cautious about representing science as a whole, and you like to represent yourself and then educate people about science, but not speak for any science as a whole.
Well, that's a perceptive analysis that, yes, that's true. Yeah. I don't have a hobby horse. I'm not trying to get you. I'm not a pundit. A pundit has a view and an opinion, and they want you to have their opinion, or they'll hand you their opinion, right? And that's your opinion. I want you to make your own opinions, but as an educator, it's incumbent upon me to try to make sure that you are as informed as you could possibly be at the time you establish your opinion.
Yes.
That's enlightenment.
Yeah.
That's enlightened governance, enlightened voting. if you vote and you're fully informed on the issues, especially in the 21st century, where understanding science as an electorate can make the difference between becoming a good shepherd of the future of civilization and one that will watch the demise of civilization. Oh my gosh, I don't know that there's been a more important century than the one we're in right now.
Yes, yes. So speaking of that, is there a particular disproved theory or a piece of bad science that you frustratingly have to correct people on all the time or educate people on?
Yeah, so I try not to invest too much emotion. So when you said frustrating, it's like, why do you keep believing? That would be frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't invest that much emotion. I'm pretty dispassionate about that. I would say over time, like lately, where do all these flat earthers come from? No, we should do maybe it's a ploy. Maybe they don't really believe it, but they want to be the first ones sent into space to orbit Earth. And this is some conspiracy, because they're going to be so annoying to everyone else. Okay, right. You go first. You go into space first so you can see that Earth is round. All right? So maybe part of me is thinking that. But I would say over time, and this is a simple one, I blame Pink Floyd for this. In 1973, their album, I know, that requires an explanation. In 1973, I don't blame them for the flat Earth, I blame them for this other thing I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
1973, their big hit album, what's the name of it?
Dark Side of the Moon.
The Dark Side of the Moon. There is no dark side of the moon. There's a far side, and there's a near side, because the moon orbits in a way that it keeps the backside away from the Earth. Okay, it's called being tidally locked. Very natural state for things in the universe, by the way, as weird as it may otherwise sound. There's a far side and there's a near side, but all sides of the moon receive sunlight across the month. So the fact that Pink Floyd had an album with that title meant I spent decades having to undo people's, as an educator. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and change the title of that to The Far Side of the Moon, and I would restore thousands of hours of my life back. So now, if you listen to the song, the title song on the album, The Dark Side of the Moon, at the very end, it fades off, and at the very end it says, "There is no dark side of the moon." So I said, "Oh, okay, all right." But then it continues, it says, "It's all dark." I said, "Oh, all right."
Oh no! So now I have to explain.
Explain that, right? So
why there's light on the moon?
I guess my point is pop culture is such a force in the world that it's very hard to undo something that people are misthinking if it is embedded in pop culture. Pop culture, music, movies, and so one needs to stay vigilant to maintain a sound foundation of what you will then think next. And I'm a fan of Mark Twain's edict, which I think should be mantra for the artist. First, get your facts straight. Then distort them at your leisure.
That's lovely. And
yeah, if you don't know that the whole moon gets light, you don't even know how to make a next creative thought based on that. Oh, by the way, there's another bit of evidence, which will sound like a really cheap plug, but another bit of evidence that science is making some inroads into our society and culture. My latest book, called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. The little book, this big, this thing. It's like on the bestseller lists, like across the country. And oh my gosh, and there are political books that hit the list and bob up and down, and this has been there for like months. And I said, wow. It's a triumph when any science book makes it to the bestseller list.
Right.
But you would celebrate that, no matter whose book it was. But now this got to, and it hit #1 for 6 weeks at the New York Times. And so it's like, whoa. So people do care. People do want this stuff.
Yeah.
And so knowing that books also is a medium, we created a whole StarTalk book, which is the essence of what the show is all about. No matter what page you turn to, there's a question about life that you might not have even thought to ask. But the very existence of that question, you say, wow, I want to know the answer to that. Like, it goes to very interesting limits. One of them is, how would you have sex in space in zero G? It's like, I mean, that's just...
I've always wanted to know.
Got to be ready for that, just in case the moment arises. But the other ones, will AI control the world? What would you have to pack to go to Mars? There's a lot of questions. What is there chemistry to love? These are questions that have come up in the show, and so it's a celebration, and we couldn't have done it without the active participation of all the folks that have been hewn from pop culture to participate in this exercise.
You've taken the intimidation out of science, but kept the magic in.
Oh, I like that.
So I have a couple questions before I have to let you go. I really would like to know, what will you be doing for the solar eclipse?
Oh, I'm delighted to say that it is a federal and state secret where I will be. No, it's I'm going media silent during the eclipse. The eclipse will sell itself. It doesn't need me. I don't mind being called by the press if they don't quite understand how a science discovery is important, and I'll go and tie a bow on it. I live in New York City, so all the news gathering headquarters are there, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're all there. And I'm an easy date for them. They just call me up. They don't even have to fly me in. It's a cab ride to the studio for the interview. I give them a sound bite. And so that role I embrace, but there are thousands of people across the country, probably tens of thousands, who are fluent enough in eclipseology that they can tell you what's going on, how and why, and what to look for. So if I remove myself from that equation, it forces media, not only national but especially local media, to find local experts. Professors of physics at community colleges, which are everywhere, heads of astronomy clubs, people who are excited about this and have the expertise to share. They don't need me for this event at all. But I will be somewhere in the path of totality, either on Earth or above it.
Oh.
But don't miss it. It's America's eclipse. America. It touches down in Oregon, and it moves 1,800 miles an hour. 1,800 miles an hour is the speed of Earth's shadow. And it comes out off the coast of South Carolina, and that shadow touches no other country.
Wow.
It's America's eclipse.
That's beautiful. So my last question to you before I let you go. If aliens are listening to our radio waves, which TV show or event do you hope they would discover first?
Oh, that's great. I hope they would see our Olympics. They would see all the nations cooperating, yet still competing, because these are elements of what it is to be human. We cooperate, but we also compete, but nobody dies. I think the Olympics is the world at its best. And it's so inclusive. You know, little island nations with small populations compete on this world stage, and everybody comes together for it. So I would hope the aliens would see that and say, hey, these folks aren't all that bad. Well, we don't have to exterminate them. We'll overlook them for some other place to enslave. And so I would say that. I hope they don't see our news broadcasts. Those are never pleasant. And I hope they see that we have an International Space Station orbiting the Earth. That is the largest collaboration of nations outside of the waging of war. The cost to sustain and cooperate with the space station represents our single greatest success in international cooperation in all of civilization. So they would see that we are spacefaring and cooperating up there as well. That's what and they need to sort of eavesdrop on the radio signals coming back in. back and forth from it. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
StarTalk is on Nat Geo.
You got to say it right. StarTalk.
StarTalk.
A little lower.
StarTalk.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right.